But one of the things that I do that was a little different from what you guys said is typically, first of all, I will always require some kind of documentation before I will say yes or no on a project. And you guys did say that in effect that you more information up front about the project is good. But another thing I will do, especially if I'm working with somebody new, or maybe working with somebody new, is I will get this documentation from them after I've had a meeting, and I will choose either a small part or like maybe if it's a short project, the whole project. But what I'll do is a very short prototype of a segment of their project or the whole project, again, depending on how big their project is. And then I will show it to them. And the purpose of this, although it costs me time, can cost me up to about 2 hours of time, is if I can't make a prototype from what they told me, that then they look at it and say, yep, that's what I was talking about, then we're not communicating even from the get-go. And at that point, we can both go, well, maybe this won't work out. Maybe I should talk to somebody else.
I agree with that, and I've done the same thing. I don't use contracts per se, but I do on occasion when the project requires it. I will write things up so that I can mirror whatever the client said that they wanted, and that way they know that I understood it. And that usually takes me a couple hours to. I have a template and I put it all in there, but it still takes me a couple hours to kind of think it all up and reference my notes and then send it off to them. So it sounds like that's the same type of deal, except for you want to go for more of the technical end of it, make sure that you're able to accomplish or communicate with them with that.
Is knowing that I'm able to understand what they are trying to achieve and we're communicating. Because I've worked on enough contracts where we didn't communicate well and it was really frustrating that I just don't want to go down that road anymore.
All right. Okay. So next question here, and I think this is an important one. We probably will spend a few minutes on here. Is how do you track your time? How do you do your billing? And I think this has not only just a technical aspect of which software do you use, but also sort of like what do you bill for?
Right.
So what do you guys think?
I can start. So again, I'm using Odesk, and it has for time-based projects or for hourly rates. You use their software that tracks your time when you are active on your computer, and it's all automatic. You're working, you get paid for it at the end of the week. If it's a milestone-based project, client setups milestones like version 1, version 2, or part this, part that, and when I submit it, they are requested to approve it. If they approve it, the money are billed from them, from the account.
Sergey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How many typically, and don't answer if you don't want to, but typically how many overlapping contracts do you work on at a time? Are you a back-to-back contract kind of guy or overlapping?
It's better to have at least 2 contracts ongoing for me. My best scheme is to have one long-term project and one short time, or maybe one long-term and working on my own games.
The reason I asked is because you said something that I found interesting. First of all, I use a application, a web app called harvestapp.com as a timesheet, sort of like your Odesk. And it also has the ability, you just click a button and it tracks how long it was, and then you click it again, it's a timesheet. The one thing that is different for me, though, is, and this is actually something I put in the contract with clients, is some of my clients, if I've deemed them to be interrupt risk clients, somebody who may interrupt you at odd times when you're working on other things, I charge a minimum amount of time if they are going to be interrupting me a lot. Because if I have a client that interrupts when I'm doing other things, like tries to reach out to me, call me, IM me, stuff like that, and it breaks my train of thought, I just lost time. So in that case, I charge a minimum of, say, like 15 minutes duration.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. And that what that also does is it trains the client, which there's a certain aspect of training clients. If they see on the bill that when they emailed you or called you or interrupted you or whatever that they got charged for that, then they're gonna think twice about doing it. It's going to need to be important. So I totally agree with that.
I don't have such problems. Part of that is because I'm living in another time zone, so when I'm working, they're sleeping. But if they do talk to me while I'm working, it's usually not that bad. So it's usually when they start talking, I switch token and stop coding, and then I just resume coding. It's not too difficult.
Yeah. So Ed, you need to start working at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. I'm also a little bit, I think, and I've noticed this from just talking to Sergey over the years now, it seems, is that Sergey's a little more able to go in and out of work quickly, whereas I'm more of like I got to work and put the blinders on.
I'm not saying that it's perfectly okay. It is definitely distracts you from your thought process, but it's not too bad.
Well, I tell you, I use FreshBooks, so I don't know if you guys have ever heard or used that at all, but it's really good. I mean, it's probably along the same lines as this Harvest thing that you're talking about, Ed. It does have a timer that you can start up, and it sits over in a little window and keeps track of your time, and then you can tag it to that time to a client and kind of put in notes for yourself what you were doing, and then at the end of the period, it makes it easy for me to go in and then generate an invoice and then send that to them, and it lets you either send them a paper invoice if they're that kind of client, or you could email them directly from the system, or you can download a PDF if you want to email them through your own email system. But I would say, based on kind of what we're talking about here, you definitely need to track your time, even if you don't think you do, right? So some people might, in the beginning when they start out, they might say, well, this project is only going to take me a week. Track your time. Track your time, because 2 weeks into it, you're going to want to know that you're going to want to be able to tell the client, hey, look, we thought it was only going to be a week, but it's actually taken 2 weeks, and I've actually spent this amount of hours. And if you keep notes and go back and look at what you've done, you can see where your time was spent, right? You can tell if your time was spent in meetings or if it was spent in coding or design or whatever. And you may think, well, I'll be able to keep track of that because I'm not an idiot. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised that if you start tracking your time, even if it's non-project related time, right? Your own, like you were talking about before, your own projects, your own email, checking your emails, checking your instant messenger, doing whatever, you'd be surprised to find out how much time you spend on something.
Well, okay. I'm not surprised anymore because I track my time.
Yeah. Well, it's it's one of those things that I know I didn't. Yeah, I did not do early on, and
how I wasted so much time.
Yeah, and it it just comes back. It's all aggregate, and it comes back over time. So, okay, another question here, and I think we're getting close to the end of here, and we may have to push some of these questions out till next time. But here's an important one. When you bill, are your bills due on receipt of the invoice, net 15, net 30, or net 45? When do people have to pay you?
What does it mean?
When is the bill due? Like, if you send them an invoice, when are they expected to pay? Immediately or within a certain period of time? What's your policy?
Often.
Often. As frequently as possible.
Be specific now.
Yeah, I generally. Go ahead, Amy. Go ahead, Brian.
I generally, if I'm working on a contract billing for hours, I prefer net 15 to keep it on the client's front burner. If I'm selling books to school districts or universities, I realize that larger organizations just take longer to do things, so I go net 30. So it depends on who I'm billing.
Yeah, exactly. And here's what I found, kind of along the same lines. It doesn't matter. Everything that I bill is due on receipt. When I send you the invoice, I want the money. That client has their own policies as to when they pay for things. Okay? Right. And if they don't pay you within that specified period of time, you may say, well, look, if you haven't paid me in 90 days, right? I'm not doing any more work for you, right? If you
Right.
you set, what are you going to do if they don't pay you in net 15? You're going to do nothing. All you're going to do is not want to work with them in the future. So
It
what I
becomes
generally
bad debt. Yeah.
it becomes or it becomes bad debt if they don't pay it. So generally what I do is I just say everything's due on, when I send you an invoice, it's due, and then each client tends to have their own cycle that they pay. Most of them pay within the 30-day window. I've had a few that were bigger that actually had sort of the 45-day window. But at the end of it all, it's up to the client when they pay the invoice.